Wang Yang wasn't sure what kind of mood he was in when he walked into the hospital room. When he saw the needle piercing the bulging veins on his mother's withered skin, he felt a deep discomfort in his heart. Sitting at the bedside, he called softly, "Mom." The old woman opened her cloudy eyes. "Gongzi, you're here. Do you want to eat something?" Wang Yang asked gently. "I'm a bit thirsty." Wang Yang helped his mother sit up and took a sip of warm water, then picked up an apple from the table and started peeling it. His mother glanced at the apple and smiled self-deprecatingly. "I remember when you were little and wanted to eat an apple. I rummaged through garbage for several nights, earned some money, and bought one for you. I didn't eat any myself and saved them all for you." Wang Yang didn't look up, concentrating on peeling the apple bit by bit. "Your father died early, and it was hard enough for me to raise you alone. To make sure you had enough to eat, I often only ate one meal a day." His mother frowned. "My poor health now is because of the sacrifices I made to take care of you." You're so lucky. It's rare to see such a filial son visiting every day," remarked an elderly woman wearing reading glasses in the next bed. His mother smiled faintly. "It's only right. I suffered for half my life for him. When he was little, I ate the rotten and bad food and saved the good stuff for him. I didn't buy new clothes for years. Now it's his turn to take care of me." She paused. "Isn't that the meaning of raising a child for old age?" Wang Yang's hand trembled inexplicably. The sharp fruit knife cut his finger, and blood dripped to the floor. He casually grabbed a few tissues, wrapped his finger, and handed the apple to his mother. Just as she was about to express concern, an older man walked into the room. Seeing the man, Wang Yang's anger flared up instantly. "What are you doing here? Get out." The old man walked awkwardly to the bedside. "I just came to see her." Seeing Wang Yang's anger, his mother felt a bit embarrassed. "Gongzi, you might have misunderstood Uncle Li." Wang Yang shouted anxiously, "If he really wanted to be with you, I wouldn't oppose it. But he tricked you into naming him as the beneficiary on your insurance policy. I can't trust him. I even suspect your illness is his doing." The old man's face turned a bit sour. All right, I'll leave. Don't argue." He turned to leave, then looked back at the old woman. "I'll come to see you next time." Wang Yang left the hospital and picked up his eldest son, who was in 3rd grade, after school. They then hurried to catch the bus. On the way, his son told him that the teacher wanted all the students to join an extracurricular class. When Wang Yang asked about the cost, his heart tightened. "Why is it so expensive? 1,000 yuan for one semester?" Wang Yang stood at the bus stop, frowning. "Is this class mandatory? If not, maybe we could just..." He abruptly stopped speaking when he saw the deep disappointment in his son's eyes. Wang Yang sighed. "We'll discuss the extracurricular class when we get home." The father and son got on the bus. Just as they boarded, someone got off, leaving a seat that Wang Yang's son quickly took. He said he had PE class today and his feet were very sore, so he could really use a rest. After 2 stops, an elderly man got on and squeezed near them, staring intently at Wang Yang's son. The old man coughed twice and then deliberately tapped his cane near Wang Yang's son's seat. Noticing the man's behavior, Wang Yang frowned. "Wang Su, get up and give your seat to the grandpa." "But Dad, my feet are very sore." His son tried to argue. "I said get up and let him sit. You can sit on my backpack." Wang Yang put his backpack on the floor for his son to sit on. The old man sat down without even glancing at Wang Yang, let alone saying thank you. When Wang Yang got home, his younger son had already been picked up by his wife and was doing homework. He walked into the kitchen where his wife was stir-frying vegetables. Wang Yang took the hot dishes out of the old microwave and placed them on the dining table. His wife wiped her hands on her apron and said, "Your son said the school is organizing a spring outing and we need to pay for it." Wang Yang sat down at the greasy table. More money. Wang Su also needs money for the extracurricular class. "By the way, your mom's hospital deposit is about to run out. Do we need to pay more?" his wife reminded him. Wang Yang rubbed his face with both hands and said helplessly, "You'd better go to the bank and withdraw some money tomorrow." At 3 in the morning, Wang Yang suddenly woke up from his dream, panting heavily and drenched in sweat. His wife was also awakened by him. "Honey, are you under too much stress? This has been going on for a week. Maybe you should see a psychologist." Wang Yang didn't reply. He got up, wiped his face with a towel, and lay back down, but he couldn't sleep for the rest of the night, staring into the darkness until dawn. The next day, Wang Yang rushed from the construction site after finishing his morning work and went to bring lunch to his mother. He carefully picked up the thermos and fed his mother one spoonful at a time. His mother stroked Wang Yang's hair. "When you were little, you ate 3 meals a day and I ate 1. Feeding you made me crave food so much, but I had to endure it to make sure you were well fed." Wang Yang sighed deeply. "Don't say that, Mom. Just eat." After ensuring his mother was settled, Wang Yang headed to another hospital that his wife had scheduled for him in the afternoon. He hadn't wanted to go, both because of the cost and his skepticism. But his wife had already prepaid in his name, so he had no choice but to go. The psychology department of this hospital wasn't inside the main building. After searching for a while, he finally found it in a building next to the inpatient department. Upon entering, Wang Yang was surprised by the scene before him. Murals made of various geometric shapes, strange decorations, a 17th century European clock, and elaborate crystal chandeliers. Is this a hospital? Wang Yang immediately felt he was in the wrong place. "Hello, you must be Mr. Wang." A large high-backed chair turned around to reveal an extremely young man sitting in it. "You're in the right place. This is the psychology department," the man continued. Wang Yang pointed at the strange decorations. "What are all these things?" "Oh, this setting is more effective for hypnosis." "Hypnosis?" Wang Yang was startled. "Don't worry, it's just a method of psychological treatment to help patients relieve stress," the man said, turning over a nameplate on the table. "He Fan." Wang Yang read the name aloud. "Are you Dr. He?" "No. He went abroad. I'm his student. My surname is Li. You can call me Dr. Li." Dr. Li moved to a sofa in the living room. "Come, sit here," he said, pointing to another sofa opposite him. Wang Yang sat down on the sofa, which was very soft, and he sank into it, feeling quite comfortable. "Your wife told me that you've been waking up suddenly at midnight recently, feeling disoriented and staying awake until dawn," Dr. Li said. Yes," Wang Yang nodded. "What do you think is causing this?" "I don't know. I feel like I'm having nightmares every night, experiencing terrifying things, but when I wake up, I can't remember anything." Dr. Li pursed his lips, rubbed his chin, and said, "It seems you're dealing with something you don't want to accept. The human body has a protective mechanism. Once something exceeds your ability to handle it, you'll instinctively block it out, just like how you forget your dreams." Dr. Li took a metronome from the cabinet and turned it on. The metronome produced a steady ticking sound. Then, he pulled a pocket watch from his pocket. "Are you willing to accept my hypnosis and let me explore your inner world?" "Of course. I'm doing this to help you better." Wang Yang involuntarily shuddered. It was the first time someone had asked to enter his mind, causing an inexplicable panic, but he forced himself to nod. "Okay." Dr. Li instructed Wang Yang to relax his entire body as much as possible and began swinging the pocket watch in rhythm with the metronome. "Now follow my lead and focus your attention on this gold pocket watch." "Good, keep watching it." "Now, you feel your hands becoming very heavy, too heavy to lift. Next, your feet. You feel very tired and just want to rest. Your eyelids are very heavy because you want to sleep." Wang Yang felt extremely tired, and his vision started to blur while looking at the watch. Dr. Li smiled faintly, a sign that the patient was entering a hypnotic state. "Now, I'll count to 3. When I reach 3, the pocket watch will drop and you will fall asleep." Dr. Li began counting, and when he said 3, the pocket watch fell from his hand, and Wang Yang obediently closed his eyes. Dr. Li turned off the metronome and observed Wang Yang. Good. He was already asleep. He took out a notebook, grabbed a pen, and got into a comfortable position. "Wang Yang, tell me, what do you see now?" With his eyes closed, Wang Yang began describing the scene in his dream. "The sky is dark, more like gray. I'm in a garbage dump. Yes, there's a lot of trash around, and it's very quiet, just me here. Wait, Wang Yang reached out his hand. Something white is descending from the sky, landing in front of me. It's a lunchbox. A lunchbox. Dr. Li raised an eyebrow. Open it and see what's inside. Wang Yang opened the lunchbox in front of him. It's my favorite sweet and sour ribs. They look pretty good. I think I should taste one. Wang Yang picked up a rib and was about to eat it when he suddenly saw long, black joints extending from it. With his eyes closed, Wang Yang made a startled motion as if throwing something away. Dr. Li quickly asked, "What happened?" "I threw the rib away because it grew legs." "Oh, and eyes." The rib turned into a spider. "A spider?" Dr. Li repeated. "Yes," Wang Yang continued. Its greasy surface sprouted fur, and it lay there motionless. "It's so disgusting. I want to kill it." Wang Yang looked down at his side and picked up an imaginary brick from the ground, smashing it at the spider. Watching Wang Yang make these actions, Dr. Li asked, "Did you kill it?" Wang Yang nodded. "Yes, I smashed it hard." Its round body flattened, and green liquid squirted from its back. "Wait a minute, oh my god." Wang Yang suddenly shouted, cold sweat seeping from his forehead, and he became agitated. "What is it?" Dr. Li also became tense. "The spider isn't dead. It's growing larger and larger. Oh my god, it's as big as me now. I can even see my reflection in its 6 compound eyes." Wang Yang gripped the armrest of the sofa, the veins on the back of his hand bulging. "It's coming towards me step by step. I have to run or it'll kill me." Wang Yang shouted, his body twisting unnaturally. "What's wrong?" Dr. Li held Wang Yang's hand. "A web. It's spinning a web, a thick strand of silk, wrapping around me in circles. I'm done for. I'm suffocating. Help me. Help me." Wang Yang grasped his neck, his face turning red. Dr. Li, holding Wang Yang's hand, said, "Calm down. Listen to me. I'll count to 3, and you'll wake up. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Wake up." "Ah." Wang Yang's eyes shot open, and he stood up abruptly, drenched in sweat, gasping for air as if he'd been drowning and just now breathed in fresh air. Dr. Li handed him a glass of water. "Are you okay?" Wang Yang took the water, drank it all in one gulp, calmed himself, and slowly said, "What did I just see? Sorry, I can't remember again." Dr. Li looked at his notebook. "You saw a lunchbox with sweet and sour ribs falling from the sky. The ribs turned into a spider, which grew larger after you tried to kill it, and it spun a web to trap you. That's roughly it." Wang Yang exhaled. "It doesn't sound that scary. Why did I feel such intense fear?" Dr. Li closed his notebook. "What you see in your dreams often reflects what you truly fear inside." Standing up and walking to the window, Dr. Li mused to himself. If the spider represents something ugly or evil, Wang Yang's instinct to attack it might suggest he has a strong sense of justice. But the spider's counterattack might imply that Wang Yang feels powerless against these challenges. Dr. Li glanced back at the still-shaken Wang Yang. "But something doesn't feel right," Dr. Li frowned. "As my mentor said, if interpretation is blocked, one must gather more information from the patient's reality." He approached Wang Yang. "Originally, to delve deeper into your thoughts, I plan to continue the hypnosis, but given your current state, let's postpone it until tomorrow. How does that sound?" Wang Yang, still subdued, nodded. "In addition," Dr. Li continued, "I need to understand you better from various aspects. So, I'd like to ask you some questions now. Is that okay?" An hour later, Wang Yang left the office. Dr. Li, staring at the notes he had taken during their session, tapped his pen against the notebook. The questions had been a detailed account of Wang Yang's recent experiences, intended to identify any potential triggers for his distress. Unfortunately, Dr. Li couldn't discern anything particularly significant. At 3/4 past midnight, Wang Yang woke up in a fright once again. Although he couldn't remember the scenes from his dream, the shivers running through his body remained, mixed with anger and a deep sense of disgust this time. He didn't understand why he felt this way, and he was drenched in sweat. Wang Yang calmed himself, deciding not to dwell on it. He tried to go back to sleep before dawn. The next day, as usual, he worked in the morning and went to deliver food to his mother at noon. As soon as he opened the door to the hospital room, he saw the old man named Li sitting beside his mother, chatting with her. Seeing Wang Yang arrive, the old man immediately stood aside warily. Just as Wang Yang was about to speak, a doctor patted his shoulder. "Are you a family member? May I have a word with you?" Wang Yang put down the thermos and followed the doctor out. The old man stepped forward to pick up the thermos and softly said, "How about I feed your mom?" Hearing this, Wang Yang glanced back, but surprisingly didn't object. He turned and continued walking out. Outside the hospital room, the doctor told Wang Yang that his mother's condition was not optimistic and that he should be prepared for a long-term battle with the illness. Wang Yang wiped his face, nodding weakly. "Also, the hospital fees have been used up. Please go to the front desk to settle the upcoming expenses," the doctor instructed before leaving. "Okay," Wang Yang nodded, his hand unconsciously slipping into his pocket to fumble around. He took out a cigarette, walked to the end of the corridor, opened the window, and took a deep drag, trying to expel his depression with the smoke. Watching the people on the road hurrying for survival, he felt a mix of indescribable emotions. Back in the hospital room, his mother had already finished eating. Seeing Wang Yang return, the man named Li seemed a bit uneasy and left after a few minutes. This time, Wang Yang calmly watched the old man leave without saying anything, just quietly tidying up the thermos. "Gongzi," his mother called softly. Wang Yang looked up. "I feel my hair is a bit messy. Can you comb it for me?" Wang Yang picked up the wooden comb from the table, sat behind his mother, and carefully gathered her hair, which was interspersed with many gray strands. "Mom, you're getting old," Wang Yang suddenly said. "All this is from working hard to raise you, which also brought on this illness," his mother replied, massaging her legs. Wang Yang said nothing, just sighed and continued combing her hair. In the afternoon, Wang Yang returned to the peculiar hypnosis room. As usual, he was received by Dr. Li, but this time, Wang Yang's wife was also present. "I asked her to come for a better understanding of your situation. She can wait outside during the session," Dr. Li explained. Like the last time, only the two of them were left in the quiet room, sitting on the sofa. Dr. Li brought out the metronome and pocket watch as usual. As Dr. Li counted down, Wang Yang fell into a deep sleep once more. "What do you see this time?" Dr. Li took out a notebook. Wang Yang frowned. "Everything is gray. This is my own home, and I'm standing in the living room. What's around you?" "Furniture, appliances, and a girl in the corner." "A girl?" Dr. Li's eyes lit up as he looked intently at Wang Yang. "Who is she?" Wang Yang shook his head. "I don't know. She has long hair, wears tattered clothes, and stands with her back to me in the corner." "Go see who she is," Dr. Li commanded. Wang Yang took a deep breath, step by step approaching the girl, hesitantly reaching out to turn her around by the shoulder. Her dirty face had delicate features, far from the frightening visage Wang Yang had expected. "Who is she?" Dr. Li asked again. Wang Yang closed his eyes, tilting his head as if pondering. "I don't know. I don't recognize this child." "Impossible. In dreams, one cannot see strangers they've never encountered. She must be someone you've met. Think carefully, who is she?" Dr. Li urged, feeling close to uncovering the source of everything. Wang Yang furrowed his brow deeply. "No, I really can't recognize her." Suddenly, Wang Yang shuddered again. "What's wrong?" Dr. Li asked. The girl smiled at me and opened her arms as if to hug me. "Are you afraid?" Dr. Li continued to ask. Seeing the harmless smile on the girl's face, Wang Yang still felt eerie. As he lowered his head to clear his mind, he noticed a dark mass at his feet. Terrified, Wang Yang looked up to find the girl's hair had grown extremely long, with the dark mass at his feet being her continuously growing hair. Wang Yang stood up, realizing the hair had wrapped around his wrists and ankles like ropes, binding him. Wang Yang sat uneasily in his seat, realizing that Dr. Li, who seemed different, continued to communicate with him. "What happened?" "Her hair, it's grown longer and bound me," Wang Yang said, his face suddenly changing from fear to anger. "She's still laughing, mocking me. I want to kill her. She's the source of all my pain. Wang Yang struggled against the hair binding him, determined to go to the kitchen where he knew there were plenty of knives. Step by step, he moved towards the kitchen, pulling out a fruit knife from the counter. With a grimace, he turned back, the knife gleaming in his hand, and lunged towards the girl. Ah, no, help me. Wang Yang shouted in his seat. Dr. Li held down Wang Yang's shoulder. What's wrong? What happened now? I went to the kitchen and got a knife. I wanted to kill this monster, but when I stabbed her, I found out there was no blood, just hair pouring out. Wang Yang exclaimed in terror, his hands clawing at the air. Her whole body is made of hair. This hair is binding me. Help. Save me. Another episode of Being Bound. Dr. Li furrowed his brow tightly. Reluctantly, Wang Yang's condition was indeed unstable. I'll count to 3, and you'll wake up. As Dr. Li counted to 3, Wang Yang woke up again, eyes wide, breathing heavily, his hands trembling involuntarily, like someone who had narrowly escaped disaster. What did you see this time? Wang Yang covered his face with both hands, leaning against the sofa, nearing exhaustion. Dr. Li recounted the dream scenario to Wang Yang. Wang Yang looked up, frowning at him. Do you understand what's happening to me? What's the root cause? Why do I keep having these nightmares? Dr. Li rubbed his pen uncomfortably, frowned slightly, opened the door, and invited Wang Yang's wife in while sitting back in his high-backed chair. Dr. Li flipped through his previous notes for a long time before looking up at the couple. It appears that from these 2 sessions of hypnosis, Mr. Wang is under significant pressure. Spiders, the girl with long hair and monstrous forms, all represent ugliness. Mr. Wang, you want to rid yourself of them, which indicates that you are actually a very responsible and righteous person at heart. Yes, my husband is very responsible. He is very filial to his mother, his wife interjected. Dr. Li nodded. Exactly. You are filial, but your mother is suffering from illness, which makes you feel deeply pained and powerless. This recurring theme of being bound in your dreams reflects this. What should I do then? Wang Yang sounded defeated. Dr. Li tapped his pen lightly on his notes. You need to ease your mind and understand that there are some things beyond your control. Your responsibility now is to spend more time with your mother, do your best to take care of her. If you can do that, then don't burden yourself with guilt. Wang Yang sighed deeply. You must let go of your inner turmoil. Your mother's illness is not your fault. Your self-blame has become your own demon. If you don't let go, it won't just be you suffering, but those around you as well. Dr. Li tried to convince Wang Yang earnestly. Honey, I'll be with you to accompany your mom. Don't burden yourself mentally. It's hard on me too, his wife added, trying to console him. Wang Yang nodded somewhat helplessly. Dr. Li continued to jot down notes, saying, I'll prescribe some antidepressants for you. Remember what I said, you've done your best. Don't add more pressure to yourself. After seeing off Wang Yang and his wife, Dr. Li closed his notebook. In the absence of his mentor, he felt rather pleased with how he had handled another patient. He hurried back as soon as he got off the plane. Upon learning that Xiaoli had continued to treat patients in his absence, he worried that his inexperienced student might misdiagnose their conditions. Back in his familiar hypnosis room, he casually hung his coat on the rack and sat down on the high-backed chair. Xiaoli stood quietly to the side. I was away. How many patients did you see? He cut to the chase. 2, and I handled both. Xiaoli lifted a corner of his mouth, visibly pleased. Show me your notes, he said expressionlessly. Xiaoli handed over the notes, explaining, one was a woman with chronic insomnia. Her hypnosis session is on the first page, and based on her condition, I diagnosed her with anxiety stemming from her husband's return after an affair. She struggles with forgiving him and dealing with her feelings. What about this patient named Wang Yang? He interrupted, asking directly. Oh, this patient is quite unique. His hypnosis dreams were all bizarre and detached from reality, like ribs turning into spiders or young girls transforming into monsters. But I managed to help him in the end, Xiaoli said lightly. He remained silent, meticulously examining Wang Yang's hypnosis records, then picked up another set of notes detailing recent events in Wang Yang's life. He Feng's brow furrowed slightly. Dr. He, is there something wrong? Xiaoli noticed He Feng's unusual expression. Dr. He. Xiaoli called again, but He Feng raised a hand to silence him. He Feng went through all the records concerning Wang Yang once more, remaining silent for a long while. What was your diagnosis for him? He Feng finally asked. Seeing He Feng's serious expression, Xiaoli became flustered, stuttering slightly. He's a devoted son. I diagnosed him with psychological suppression due to his mother's serious illness, seeing her suffer and feeling helpless. What about your advice to him? I advised him to spend more time with his mother, do his best, and not blame himself. He Feng stood up, putting on his windbreaker. Let's go. You should be able to contact this patient, right? I want to meet him in person. Xiaoli suddenly felt uneasy. Dr. He, did I make a mistake in my diagnosis? Did I mess up? He Feng frowned deeply. Yes, you overlooked something very important. What is it? Human nature. When Han Fan and Wang Yang first met, it unexpectedly happened at the police station. Wang Yang was involved in a murder case. When Han Fan and Xiaoli arrived, Wang Yang had not yet come out. His wife was waiting outside. She briefly recounted what had happened. It turned out that Wang Yang was a witness cooperating with the investigation. The victim turned out to be Wang Yang's mother, and the perpetrator was an older man named Li. Earlier today, around noon, when Wang Yang came to visit his mother, he found out that she had been taken out for a walk by the older man, surnamed Li. Sensing something was wrong, Wang Yang searched around the large hospital area and finally found his mother sitting in a wheelchair by a secluded artificial lake on the hospital grounds, pushed into the water by the older man. Upon discovering this, Wang Yang jumped into the lake to search, but it was too late. Afterwards, Wang Yang called the police, and the older man was apprehended. He confessed to his crime, admitting that he had planned to create the appearance that the elderly woman had accidentally fallen into the water during lunchtime when there were no witnesses around. As for his motive, it was related to an insurance policy where he was named as the beneficiary. I didn't expect Wang Yang's mother didn't die of illness, but ended her life in this way, Xiaoli commented on the side. Wang Yang must be deeply affected. Wang Yang's wife sighed repeatedly. Yes, he's not in a good state. I'm worried about him. If he could just cry it out and vent, it might be better, but he's been silent since the incident. As they were talking, Wang Yang walked out from inside. The police have finished questioning. Let's go home, Wang Yang said expressionlessly, looking up and seeing Xiao Li and Han Fan. Frowning, he asked, Dr. Li, why are you here? Xiao Li was about to speak, but was stopped by Han Fan, who quickly said, We're just here to check on the patient's condition as part of routine follow-up. We didn't expect Mr. Wang to encounter such a tragedy. Please accept our condolences. Wang Yang looked at Han Fan, who smiled sincerely. Without much response, he just took his wife's hand and quickly left the police station. Back in the hypnosis room, Xiaoli couldn't understand and asked, Didn't you say we should inform Wang Yang of the truth if there was a misdiagnosis? Why didn't you tell him now? Han Fan leaned back on the sofa. Maybe it's not necessary anymore. After a pause, Xiaoli continued, Teacher, I want to know where I went wrong. Han Fan rubbed his nose and looked out the window before slowly saying, Didn't you notice anything from Wang Yang's daily activities? Xiaoli shook his head. On the afternoon of April 3rd, during the first hypnosis session, what was Wang Yang doing before? He was feeding his mother. In the afternoon, his dream imagery was related to food. On April 4th, during the second hypnosis session, Wang Yang had just combed his mother's hair before. His afternoon imagery was related to hair. After saying this, Han Fan turned to look at Xiaoli again. Don't you think this is too much of a coincidence? Well, Xiaoli frowned, feeling something but unable to grasp it clearly. What do you think the spider in Wang Yang's dreams represents? Han Fan asked again. Something ugly. More specifically, torment caused by his mother's illness. Han Fan shook his head. You overlooked something. What did the spider originally transform from? Xiaoli thought for a moment. Sweet and sour ribs. Pork ribs. What's your favorite dish? Han Fan suddenly asked for no apparent reason. Steamed base. Who makes it? My mom. Han Fan sighed. A person's taste preferences are often shaped by the person closest to them. So, who do you think Wang Yang's favorite sweet and sour ribs would come from? Shaoli lowered his head in silence, beginning to contemplate deeply. Han Fan continued, in the second dream, the girl who wanted to hug Wang Yang indicates that she knew Wang Yang well, but he couldn't recognize her. Can you now guess who she is? There was a hint of panic in Shaoli's eyes as he muttered to himself. Could it be a younger version of Wang Yang's mother? Han Fan nodded. He might have unintentionally seen a photo of his mother when she was young. Mother, spider, hair, constraints. Shaoli suddenly raised his head sharply. Could it be that deep down he feels his mother's love is a form of constraint? Shaoli stood up abruptly. Is that true? Isn't familial love supposed to be the greatest emotion in the world? How could anyone feel constrained by it? Han Fan picked up a cup of tea from the table and took a sip. I have a friend whose father was often away during his childhood, leaving his mother to manage the household and raise the children on her own. Eventually, his mother became the head of the household, and everything had to be according to her wishes. My friend sometimes disagreed with his mother, and she would recount tirelessly how she sacrificed and struggled to raise him when he was young. My friend had no choice but to compromise. My friend has told me more than once that his mother made him feel oppressed, and he wanted to escape from that home. Han Fan set down the tea. I heard that Wang Yang grew up without a father, and his mother worked hard to raise him. Because of this, Wang Yang should be even more grateful for this love and repay it. So why does he feel constrained? Shaoli interjected. Your words have answered your own question. The problem lies in the word should. Giving up a seat on the bus to the elderly, respecting and caring for the elderly are traditional virtues, and we should follow them. But it must be willingly. Doing so willingly is a virtue. Doing so begrudgingly is moral coercion. The greatness of love lies in its selflessness and lack of expectation. If love and sacrifice become a tool to compel compliance, don't you think that love has soured? Han Fan said. Shaoli scratched his head in frustration. Then should I still advise him to spend more time with his mother? The most frightening thing is not even that, Han Fan continued. The most frightening thing is the appearance of murderous intent in his dreams, picking up bricks, wielding a knife. Could Wang Yang actually want to harm his mother? Shaoli was startled by his own words. Not exactly. This idea might be deeply buried in Wang Yang's subconscious. The financial burden of his mother's care is bottomless, and she attributes her physical ailments to the efforts of raising Wang Yang, which exhausts him. Wang Yang works as an installation worker at a construction site. His family isn't well off, and he has 2 sons who need money everywhere, adding to his stress. It wouldn't be surprising if thoughts like, "It would be better if my mother were dead," crossed his mind. Han Fan's words sent a chill down Shaoli's spine. He picked up the tea and took a sip to steady himself. Don't be too afraid, Shaoli. Wang Yang is still a good person. Otherwise, he wouldn't forget the content of his dreams every time. It's his way of resisting. He rationalizes and doesn't allow himself to entertain such thoughts. Shaoli seemed to realize something and suddenly asked, Do you think he could have killed his mother? Han Fan glared at Shaoli. The old man admitted to pushing the old lady into the water. How could it be Wang Yang? But as soon as he finished speaking, his gaze turned deep. I just don't know if Wang Yang did everything he could when he jumped into the water to save his mother. Han Fan sighed deeply and looked out the window. Human nature is far from the truth, goodness, and beauty you imagine. It's like a well-disguised abyss, peering into everyone who calculates the benefits and losses for survival. When they're not paying attention, it drags them into eternal darkness.